The clinic smelled like bleach and sugar, clean, clinical, and wrong, because the tiny vial in my palm cost the kind of money that made grown men cough like it was a joke. Mason's hand was cold in mine, small knuckles worrying the edge of my sleeve as he watched the nurse tape the bandage over his port. He was 5 and brave in the way only little kids are brave. Small smiles even when tired, asking the same soft question about dinosaurs between drips of medicine. I had sold a drawer of things, taken a second job, asked favors, and finally scraped together enough to buy the med the oncologist said would at least buy him more days, maybe months. Time that smelled like homework and playgrounds instead of hospital lights. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I had the receipt folded thin in my pocket, warm from the heat of my body, proof that I had done the thing everyone told me I should. I thought my parents would be somewhere in the background of this life. Distant, occasionally present, the kind of people who showed up to graduations in suits and left early. That was what I'd learned to expect. But the universe doesn't hand out rehearsed roles. My mother and sister were waiting in the hospital corridor like vultures with lipstick. My mother's jacket was polished and too new, like an announcement, and my sister held a clutch that clicked when she crossed the corridor, like a metronome counting out my worth. They smiled at the receptionist as if they were about to stage a victory. I should have seen it then, what they'd come for, but I had a child who needed medicine and a single-mindedness that made other things blur. "Hi," my mother said, bright as a bulb. Her voice was syrup and maintenance. "We're just here to support Dean's next big meeting." She said Dean, as if it were the name of their investment, not my son. I went to hug Mason and felt her hand on my arm, not soft. A clamp. "Abby, can we talk?" she asked, like a woman asking to borrow salt. I said, careful. "We can talk afterwards. The nurse—" She didn't let me finish. "We need a family deposit," she said, crisp. "Dean's contract came through this week. The designer already paid a deposit on wardrobe. We're stretched. You know how it is." She looked past me, at the nurse, at anyone who might overhear. The word stretched hung like a public placard. My throat tightened because I knew what stretched meant in their vocabulary. My needs were math in their ledger and numbers always bent toward whoever shined brighter in photos. I smelled their rehearsal, how they'd practiced generosity in front of a camera and calculated every expense behind closed doors. I slid the receipt from my pocket without thinking. I wanted them to see the truth of what I had done with my rent money and my overtime and the small emergency fund I kept in a biscuit tin. I wanted them to know that I had chosen Mason over a million things they called opportunities. My mother's eyes skimmed the paper like it was an unwanted advertisement. Her smile thinned. She let the clutch fall open and the scene shifted. Her posture went from patron to prosecutor. "You spent our money," she said, low, as if stating a grocery list. "You took funds that should have been for family investment. Dean needed a new sample for tomorrow. He can't go without it." I put the receipt back. "That was my money," I said, because saying it out loud felt like anchoring the truth. "I worked for that. Mason needed this treatment." My sister sat down like an actress taking her cue. "Mom's right," she said, venom tucked in a sugar wrapper. "Comfort is how you survive in our world. You don't understand the optics. If Dean looks perfect on stage, doors open. People invest. We thought you agreed to the plan." "Plan," I repeated. "What plan?" "You mean the plan where one child eats and the other pays?" They had always used the word plan to refer to things that never involved me. Tuition for one sister, braces for the other, applause for the golden child. It was structural cruelty disguised as strategy. My mother stepped closer, palm flat like she was about to bestow a crown. "You knew how families operate," she said. "We keep things proportional. You took from the pot. You should have asked." My chest flattened. "I asked my neighbor to watch Mason for an extra shift. I sold." "You did what?" Mom said. Her voice changed into a blade. "You sold things? You sold family assets? You never—" She stopped. Her eyes sharpened the way knives do when they're about to cut soft meat. I told her about the small things I'd sold, about refusing payday loans, about late shifts at the cafe, because the truth steadied me. Mason's fingers twined with mine. He looked at me like I was a map he trusted. That trust was why her words could not touch me in the same way. That was when she hit me. It was not cinematic. It was simple and sudden. The backhand cracked across my throat with the flat, humiliating thud of an answered drill. Air left my lungs like something practical. My hand flew to my neck because my voice had disappeared inside me. Mason screamed, pure, immediate, and the room shifted into a sound so sharp it felt like glass. Mom's face did not show surprise. There was no moment of fevered regret. She had trained her hands to move like a judge's gavel when she needed to make a point. "Her comfort comes first," she said, and the words were glassy and proud. "Always." People turned. A nurse's station burst into a chorus of whispers. My mother's palm was still hovering, calm, calculated. My sister's phone blinked as she filmed with the casual fury of someone making proof they were right. I swallowed and tasted copper in my mouth. Fear, blood, humiliation. I thought of calling for help, of pulling out my phone, of screaming. I did none of those things because moment-to-moment decisions are heavy and messy, and I had a 5-year-old who needed a mom who could move. I picked Mason up because he was my life in one small, solid thing. He hugged my neck, and I felt his small heart beat against my chin like a metronome for what mattered. I didn't look at my mother when I left. I left with the taste of the slap in my throat and the sound of my sister's shoes clicking against the floor like a judge walking away. We drove in a silence that was not comfortable. Mason dozed against me with his head heavy, soft as a saucer. I called the pharmacist from the car and confirmed the next delivery, thinking the practical things would steady me. Fear was a low sound in the back of my skull, but I had a list, appointments to keep, calls to make, a son who slept like a small, vulnerable thing. At the motel that night, I lay awake with an ice pack pressed to my throat and recalled the pattern of little cruelties stitched across years, bragging about one child's scholarship while telling me to be grateful for crumbs, praising a sister for sacrifice while undermining my pleas for help. Their cruelty had an architecture. It had a blueprint. It was not accidental. I let Mason sleep in the crook of my arm and watched his small chest rise and fall. The receipt for the medicine sat on the nightstand like a talisman. I had chosen him. Every penny, every refusal, every quiet phone call. My mother had chosen performance. The two choices could not reconcile. Their love had always been conditional and theatrical. Mine was a ledger of small, practical acts that kept my boy breathing. When dawn came, it pulled a bright strip across the motel curtain, and I did not feel triumphant. I felt weary and fierce and singular in a way that had nothing to do with their approval. I thought of the future, work to do, bills to juggle, nights at the clinic waiting room, and I thought of the choice I had already made. I had bought my son his medicine. I had crossed a line in a family ledger that could never be erased. I lay there holding Mason and felt something else settle inside me, quiet and absolute. They had used their comfort as armor and my son's life as an inconvenience. I had a receipt, a record, and a small, stubborn plan. I would not beg for their approval. I would not patch the hole in their moral accounting with my apologies. I closed my eyes and listened to Mason breathe. Outside, traffic moved like indifferent waves. Inside, I rehearsed practical things, calls to make, places to apply, funds to raise. I did not have an epic conclusion yet. I had a continuous set of small acts that would become my life. And that would have to be enough, for tonight, for the next infusion, for the long time it would take to make someone else's comfort less important than my son's survival. I woke up the next morning with my throat still sore, swollen. Every swallow reminding me exactly what my mother decided my son's life was worth. I sat in the motel bathroom, lights buzzing above the mirror, and stared at myself like I was looking at a woman I hadn't met fully yet. I wasn't crying. I was calculation. Survival requires switching modes. I learned that overnight. I wasn't going back to their house. I wasn't repeating the scene where I give explanations to people who already decided I wasn't human unless I served their hierarchy. I found a small community care program in the city that helped fund single parents dealing with childhood cancer treatment. They didn't ask why. They didn't ask me to prove my son deserved care. They only asked for receipts and medical forms. I sent them everything. Within 7 days, they approved partial assistance, arranged transport to a partnered clinic, and pointed me toward a work program that paid weekly, not monthly, exactly what I needed. Week by week, things stabilized. Not perfect, not glamorous, but real. My parents kept calling, not to apologize, to demand. My mother left voicemail after voicemail about family reputation and sabotaging Dean's momentum. She texted that I created division. She said Mason's illness was pulling emotional resources out of alignment. Every message was the same. Their universe needed 1 star, and it wasn't my son. I let the calls ring out, but I wasn't silent. I wasn't passive. I was paying attention. One night, Dean called me directly and said bluntly, "Mom needs rent this month. She said you can cover it since you don't have real bills anyway." I looked at Mason asleep in his hospital bed, tiny hand curled around his stuffed dinosaur, monitors steady like quiet proof of what mattered, and I felt it. The moment I understood exactly what needed to shift. The day they chose to hit me instead of help me, I became their last source of survival without them realizing it. They were so used to me putting out fires they lit, they forgot I could simply stop showing up with water. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed to prepare to cut off the access they treated like oxygen. I decided that the next time they came begging for anything, money, shelter, social convenience, connection, I would not give, not patch, not rescue. They would come. And when they did, I already knew what I was going to do. They came sooner than I expected. 8 months later, my son was stable enough to have outpatient rotation instead of weekly infusion. I had a steady schedule. I was working 2 part-time remote admin contracts, and I had a small savings growing. Not huge, but enough to breathe without panic. I did not post about it. I did not brag. I just worked. Quietly. Consistently. Like a woman who no longer needed permission. My parents' world finally cracked when Dean got dropped by the brand. His contract never finalized. His sponsorship collapsed. Mom texted me, "Emergency! We need $1,900 to cover 2 months, or we lose this house." Then Dad called. He didn't yell this time. His voice sounded like a man who discovered gravity late in life. "We can work this out," he muttered. "Family needs each other. You know that." I stood in my small living room, folding Mason's dinosaur pajamas. He was in the kitchen eating cereal, humming quietly. There was nothing cinematic about the moment. They were just asking for the resource they believed they owned forever. I said calmly, "You hit my throat because I bought medicine that saved your grandson's life." Silence from his end, thick and flat. "You told me her comfort came first," I said, "and now mine comes first." Dad exhaled hard, a frustrated animal noise. "Are you really throwing away family because of one emotional moment?" "You threw away family the moment you traded a child's pain for a runway dress," I said. Then I blocked his number, permanently. The next day, my mother tried from a different number. "We can come stay with you for a while," her message read, like I was the charity shelter for the monsters who built my trauma. I never replied. I never sent money. I never offered help. I never gave them a single way back into my life. And when they finally showed up at my workplace lobby unannounced, desperate, worn down, pretending softness like costume fabric, security escorted them out within minutes because I already had their names listed as restricted individuals. Their humiliation was quiet, administrative, unemotional, the only language abusive parents never expect. Mason never saw them again, and I didn't carry guilt. I carried proof of what survival actually looks like. Months later, when he ran around the small backyard of the duplex we rented, laughing, shoes dirty from grass stains, he looked up and said, "Mom, we're safe now, right?" I knelt beside him and nodded once. "Yes," I said, "we are safe now." I meant it. I didn't just break the cycle. I shut the exit door behind it. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.